Hi everyone, it's Autumn here, another segment of Black Spring. I'm just coming to you today because I have a couple of things that I'd like to discuss. Um, for one, the video will encompass a couple of things that actually precede my generation, no less of a parallel to the social ecosystems that we are seeing today. Also, we will mention the element of fear, shared spaces, as well as some of the philosophies of post Nazi Germany immigrants. We've referred to them before in maybe a previous video where I discussed the Frankfurt School, which those philosophers came from the Nazi Germany era. They included Marcuse, Horkheimer, and Adorno, just to name a few. We kind of previously discussed some of the dynamics of the post World War II, the dynamics, and also we've discussed in another video how the U.S. liberates those from areas of tyranny, conflict, whether it be political, religious, persecutions. However, the Marxist philosophers that I just mentioned, those philosophers greatly contributed to what we have as to me, like a recreation of the 1960s cultural Marxism is what I would like to identify. Also, there's a group think. It's a similar group think that we see today. Also, those philosophers created the dynamics and the platform for what we see in our colleges, such as the culture with the millennials, in which you have inside the curriculums you have Africana studies, Chicano studies, gender studies, LGBT studies, multicultural studies. These kinds of studies were created, I think, to as a conduit to the Marcuse, Horkheimer, and Adorno critical theory. This theory, I'm going to try to give you it's a theory that basically it kind of tears away, works its way against social constructs, kind of a nihilistic idea or demeanor towards life. Kind of depressing. Nothing really means anything. Whether that be marriage, education. It also promotes kind of a sexual revolution or liberations. These were movements that we had seen previously in the 1960s, which are also, we're seeing those movements today with the groupthink, rebellions. However, these philosophers were successful at the time with the critical theory, conduits and tactics, because they didn't quite find, the vulnerabilities in the working class as some of the other European nations had seen during that time. However, if we look at another segment of this from kind of a mobilization, a call for mobilization, we see in the left, we see that they're calling for mobilization and more wars, more environmental kind of mobilization. Here again, I've discussed previously that this is also to me another conduit to the UN Agenda 21. many of these environmental campaigns came along previously, and the left likes to use fear tactics similar to those during the 60s, in which students had shared spaces. There were televisions and these kinds of things. There were protests. But the left uses fear. Well, the world's going to end, if we don't do X, Y, and Z. The time in the 60s, they had things like the Cuban Missile Crisis, Cold War, those kinds of it's the same kind of fear. I'm not saying that the same context, but it's the same, the fear. The left likes to use emotion to drive generations of young people, or even the UN has referred to, the youth as being agents of change. If you look at your UNESCOs, and if you look at what's going on in your school systems and these new things that they're being implemented, whether in California or New York, they are truly implementing what they're calling green. And I've said previously that all things green, you might need to be a little bit suspicious of the man behind the curtain. But again, I am reiterating that that the Green New Deal and many of these things that are being introduced today are more schemes and tactics by the left to get the U.S. In step with the UN Agenda 21. I also previously discussed how the President Donald Trump did not sign the Migration Compact. However, with globalists and bureaucrats within our government working against American interest, that's how these elements, even though we did not sign any legal or binding agreements as a nation, we're still being infiltrated on the borders. They're trying their best to do it through trade, whether it's, the USMCA, which has some language there that will shave off sovereignty. In fact, President Trump's action recently to raise the tariffs on Mexico, that's an ability that he has. That's a sovereignty and an ability that he has without this USMCA. So, the USMCA has language that would limit his ability to raise those kinds of tariffs. So it's important for everyone to read as much as you can before making decisions or voting on pieces of legislations, or even contacting your Congress or your representatives in reference to these trade agreements, because they're all linked to this destabilization and shaving sovereignties off from American interest and American economy. But here again, the cultural Marxism continues. You will continue to see these theories from the left, and you'll also continue to see more parallels as things go on, especially with the election season heating up, and it's a very reactionary time. And if you like what you see here, please hit subscribe or like, and maybe you can see me next time here on Black Spring.